What if everything they told you about family was a lie? In today's gripping psychological tale, we follow Olivia's journey from silence to truth. A woman branded as unstable for daring to say no. But this isn't just about betrayal. It's about reclaiming your voice after being erased. As her STO unfolds through courtroom drama, hidden DNA, and years of emotional warfare, you'll witness how strength is not about revenge, but about rising with clarity. Stay with us as we uncover the layers of manipulation, healing, and inner rebirth, because sometimes saying no is the bravest thing you can do. The confrontation at the apartment, when family becomes a burden. They stood in my Seattle apartment as if they owned it. My mother walked in first, her perfume slicing through the air like a memory I never wanted to revisit. Liam followed, leaning against my kitchen counter like he belonged there. I'm Olivia. I'm 32. And I've built every inch of this life without them. A 6-figure income, a corner office, a view of the water that I pie. D4. They didn't come to admire any of it. They came for my money. The moment I saw them, I felt that old weight settle on my chest. That invisible pressure to explain, to please, to surrender. But I had outgrown those chains. So, my mother's voice cut through like ice. You're being selfish. This is what family does. I'd heard it before. When I gave up my birthday money at 13 so Liam could go to soccer camp. When I skipped prom to pay for my SAT prep. When I worked 3 jobs through college while Liam failed startup after startup. I folded my arms. I'm not giving you my money. Her eyes hardened. It's not yours. It's family money. We raised you. I looked at her. No. You raised me to survive you. That's what I've done. Liam laughed, offering his latest scheme. Just a little help, Liv. His tone was casual, as if he hadn't drained our parents' retirement or lived rent-free in their home for over a decade. I told him no. Again. And when they accused me of thinking I was better than them, I didn't flinch. I simply said the truth. I always knew I was. My mother's expression turned from insulted to enraged. Without us, you'd be nothing. I opened the door. Then you'll be fine without me. They walked out. But the war was just beginning. The petition that decides a life when love turns into a tool of control. On Monday morning, the receptionist handed me an envelope with trembling fingers. Her eyes said what her mouth couldn't. I opened it slowly. A man in a suit waited in the lobby, arms crossed like this was routine. Olivia Hayes, you've been served. Inside was a legal petition, conservatorship, filed by my parents, claiming I was mentally unfit to manage my own life. For a moment the world blurred, then snapped into focus. They were not just angry. They were trying to erase me, take everything I had built, frame my strength as instability, my independence as delusion. I sat in the brick room, fluorescent lights humming like static in my chest. I read every word. They said I was erratic, emotionally unstable, isolated. Their version of concern was a weapon with paperwork. But I had seen this before. Growing up, I watched love turned into leverage. Silence traded like currency. I remembered birthdays without candles. Victories unacknowledged. The unspoken rule was clear. Liam could fall apart and still be called gifted. I could achieve everything and still be called difficult. Now they wanted to call me dangerous. That night I opened my laptop. Years of files, recordings, messages, notes, everything I'd been told to forget I had archived. This was not paranoia. This was preparation. I wasn't crazy. I had just grown up in a house where gaslighting wore the mask of family. And now they were using the same tools to break me down again. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I had built too much, lost too much, vet too much to be silenced now. So I stared at that petition, not with fear, but with fire. The journey of survival, hidden memories, and untold evidence. I grew up in a house where memory was rewritten daily, where apologies were rare and gaslighting was routine, where I was told that the screaming never happened and that my tears were overreactions. At 11 I began recording things. Not to prove them wrong but to remind myself I wasn't crazy. That the cold shoulder was real. That bracelet was missing. That I wasn't imagining the silence at the dinner table when I spoke. By 20 I had files backed up on 3 drives. Voicemails of my mother saying I embarrassed the family. Texts from Liam demanding money at midnight. I documented not because I planned revenge but because I needed truth. Because sometimes the only way to stay sane is to hold on to facts like lifelines. When the conservatorship papers arrived, I didn't panic. I opened a folder labeled Survival. Inside were years of records, conversations, accusations, threats. My mother's voice calm but cutting. Dawn. Make us look bad, Olivia. Help your brother. I could hear Liam laughing in the background. That audio alone told a story that courtrooms rarely see. The kind where the villain smiles while asking for our help and the victim is called dramatic for saying no. I had kept everything they wanted me to forget. I wasn't just fighting for control of my finances. I was fighting for the right to remember. To say this happened. To say I was there. I wasn't broken. I was prepared. That night I played the oldest recording I had. Me whispering into a tape recorder I hid in my closet. I was crying. I just want them to stop yelling. I just want to be okay. Press pause. And FO. Are the first time in years I whispered back. You made it. We made it. The concealed bloodline, a question of identity that shattered a family. The photo was buried in a box marked Taxes 1995. I had gone back to the Tacoma house late at night. The attic smelled like UST and forgotten truths. I opened box after box until I found it. A picture of my mother younger. Standing next to a woman with my eyes. On the back in faded ink were 6 words: Yvette, do not tell Derek anything. I stared at that name. Yvette. I remembered it once whispered in an argument when I was 15. A name quickly shut down. She was dead, they said. But Google said otherwise. A lawyer in Bellevue. Specializing in family law. And she had my mother's maiden name. I drove 15 miles the next day. Rain traced the windshield as I rehearsed every word. The receptionist looked skeptical. No appointment, she said. I know, but this is about Victoria. Her eyes shone. Wait here. 10 minutes later, a woman with silver hair and a suit walked in. She stopped when she saw me. Olivia, she said. I handed her the photo. This was in their attic. You're in it. She studied it. I didn't think she kept this. I pulled out the petition for conservatorship. They're trying to take everything. They say I'm unfit. Her face remained unreadable. Do you have proof? I opened my laptop. Voicemails. Texts. Recordings. A clip of Liam demanding money while laughing. Her eyes narrowed. Send me everything, she said. We'll respond. Request a hearing. But Olivia, do you understand what you're about to start? I looked at her and for the first time I said it out loud. They started it. Those who once walked away. And how they returned to seek justice. I knocked on Savannah's door with more hope than certainty. The last time we saw each other was a tense Thanksgiving dinner where Liam had too much wine and too little shame. She had always been polite enough to stay quiet. But I remembered her eyes that night. The kind of eyes that had seen too much and said too little for too long. She opened the door, arms crossed, face unreadable. Why now, she asked. Because you know who he really is, I said. And I think you are tired of pretending you don't. There was a pause before she stepped aside. 5 minutes and she dropped her guard. He drained our joint account, she said, bought a drone and a gaming console. Then told me my job didn't matter because he would be a millionaire by 30. He is 36. Can I record, I asked. She hesitated. Only if you protect me. I promise. She nodded. I hit record. She spoke quietly but clearly. She told me about the Thanksgiving fight. About Liam screaming that I thought I was better than everyone. About how my mother told her I was unstable, that the family had ways to deal with me. My stomach twisted. You have proof. She handed me a flash drive. The baby monitor caught everything. I stared at it. This was more than support. This was evidence. Back home, Nico was already cataloging files. He glanced up as I walked in. This voicemail, he said, where your mom says you are just like your aunt, always ruining things. It proves she knew about Avit. I handed him Savannah's flash drive. He whistled. They did not see this coming. I looked at my laptop screen full of folders labeled threats, manipulation, silence. These were not just files. They were pieces of a truth long buried. And the people who once stayed silent were finally speaking. Masks unveiled. When justice becomes the weapon of the once powerless. The courtroom smelled like polished wood and tension. I sat beside Yvette as the judge entered. Nico was behind me, Savannah Jew. Sti a few rows back. The people who once doubted me now formed a wall I did not know I needed. The opposing lawyer began with a smile. The Hayes family seeks conservatorship out of love, concern, and a sense of duty. I nearly laughed. Yvette stood, her voice calm and deliberate. There is no Medi-Cal diagnosis. No record of instability. My client earns $120,000 a year. She has no debt, no criminal history. Their concern is a disguise for control. The judge nodded. Sustained. Stick to facts. Then came Liam. Press suit, empty charm. Olivia cut us off, he said. She accuses our mother of theft. She has always been difficult. Emotional. He spoke of a couch I had bought as if it were a crime. Yvette objected. Her income justifies the purchase. The issue here is not her spending. It is Liam's failed businesses funded by this family. The judge narrowed her eyes. Move on. Victoria took the stand last. She spoke of me with sorrow in her voice. Olivia is troubled. She isolates. She imagines betrayal. Yvette handed the judge a flash drive. Exhibit A. A recording from Th. Thanksgiving. Liam's voice slurred from wine. She thinks she is better than me. That money should have been mine. I will make her regret it. My mother's voice followed. Don't provoke him, Olivia. The judge looked up. Is this your voice? Victoria paused. Yes. Silence followed. For the first time in years they were exposed not in the shadows of family whispers but in the clarity of law. And I did not flinch. The truth in the DNA, and the collapse of a script called Blood Ties. Yvette waited until the courtroom emptied. She placed a sealed envelope on the table between us. The results are in, she said. I held my breath. The paper was thin but heavy. Not Derek's. She looked at me with something close to sorrow and pride. It's Thomas. He's your biological father. My chest tightened. So many things clicked into place. The silences. The altered documents. The trust fund that had never truly been mine. I remembered the letter from the attic written in shaky handwriting. Olivia, if you are reading this, I failed you. I saw how strong you were becoming. You deserve to know. We submitted the DNA results into evidence. Yvette stood once more. Your Honor, this nullifies the petitioner's legal standing. Derek Hayes is not Olivia's father. The courtroom rippled. Victoria Sto. OD yelling this is slander. But the judge raised her hand. Sit down. I watched Derek. He stared at the floor unmoving. Did you know, I asked? He did not answer. Victoria snapped. He knew. He just didn't care. As long as the money stayed in the family. Derek flinched. Outside the courthouse, Victoria grabbed my arm. You are tearing this family apart. I shook her off. No, I said. You did that years ago. That night I walked into my apartment with a different kind of silence. One not built on fear but on freedom. Nico handed me a glass of wine. You okay, he asked. I looked at the wall where my family's photo used to hang. I'm not broken, I said. Just finally whole. The DNA was more than proof. It was a key. Not just to the truth but to something I thought I would never claim. My name, my story, my beginning. A new name, a free self reborn from the ashes of the past. The paperwork was simple. A name change request filed with the court. But the meaning behind it felt enormous. Olivia Reeves. My birthright. My truth. I had never really felt connected to the name Hayes. It had always felt like something I was holding onto out of obligation. A label given by people who wanted to erase me. I signed the final document at Yvette's office. She poured 2 glasses of wine. To the end of one story, she said, and the beginning of another. I smiled faintly. My smile did not yet know how to be joyful, but it knew how to be real. That was enough. Back home I boxed up old photos, old letters, awards, certificates, things I had once clung to in order to prove my worth. I did not need them anymore. My worth was not in what I kept but in what I chose to let go. Nico came over with dinner. He watched as I taped up another box. You sure about this, he asked. I nodded. I am not that girl anymore. He leaned against the counter studying me. You know, you could I'd about this. People would listen. Maybe? I said. But this is not a story of revenge. It is a story of reclamation. He smiled. That is your title. Later that week I stood in front of Thomas's grave. The sky was gray and soft. I placed a copy of the DNA result by the headstone. I do not know if you ever knew me, I whispered, but I know you now. Vet stood beside me, silent, coffee in hand. I told her I had started a scholarship in his name for kids who were invisible in their homes. She smiled. He would have loved that. For the first time I felt it. I was not surviving anymore. I was living. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means you're no longer controlled. I saw her in the grocery store parking lot. Victoria. Sitting in her car. Window half down. Eyes sunken and tired in a way I had never seen before. Olivia, she called out. I stopped. For a moment the girl in me waited for a mother. But the woman I had become stood still. She opened the door slowly. I didn't know how to love you, she said. I nodded. I know. You weren't keeping me safe, I replied. You kept me small. Her eyes welled with tears. Do you hate me? I shook my head. No. But I don't forgive you. Not yet. Maybe not ever. There was no anger in my voice. Just space. Space between the wound and the wisdom. Forgiveness was no longer a duty. It was a choice I could make only when I was ready. And I wasn't there yet. She nodded as if she already knew. Then rolled up her window. I stood for a moment, then walked away. The distance between us no longer burned. It just existed. That night on the balcony with Nico and Yvette, we passed a bottle of wine under city lights. Justice feels messier than I thought, I said. Yvette laughed softly. It always is. Nico leaned back. Oh's the illusion. That is the hard part. I looked at them. The people who stood beside me, not because of blood but because of choice. Inside my apartment the boxes were almost gone. The photo wall was bare. In their place was a quiet I had never known before. Not silence from fear. Silence from peace. Forgiveness wasn't about excusing the harm. It was about no longer letting it speak for me. No longer letting it decide how I lived. And in that moment I understood. I didn't need to forgive to be free. I only needed to stop needing their permission. It wasn't for revenge, it was to reclaim the right to be myself. I used to imagine revenge as fire, something that scorched everything in its path. But standing in court facing the people who tried to erase me, I felt something else. Calm. Not quiet from fear but from clarity. I didn't come here to destroy them. I came here to reclaim myself. The judge denied their petition. Conservatorship revoked. All access to my accounts blocked from them. Their lies were documented. Their intentions exposed. And for once the law didn't fail me. It listened. Victoria stormed out. Liam followed, silent and pale. Derek didn't meet my eyes. But none of them mattered now. What mattered was that I had stayed. That I had spoken. That I had not abandoned myself again. Back at Yvette's office she handed me the final documents. Restitution, damages, even a formal apology from the court for mishandling the case. I traced the edge of the folder. This wasn't just compensation. It was acknowledgement. Proof that I had not made this up. That I had not been unstable. I had been unheard. Nico looked over my shoulder. You did it, he said. I nodded. And not for them. For me. Later that night I opened my notebook. I wrote down a single sentence. This is not a story of revenge. This is a story of return. Not to the past. But to the self I had always been before they taught me to disappear. When they call you unstable just because you dared to say no. They called me unstable because I said no. Not once. Not in anger. But with clarity. I had boundaries. I had a voice. And for people use. To controlling you through guilt, silence, and obligation that was dangerous. The word unstable followed me like a shadow. It showed up in whispers in court in the language of concern. She isolates. She's erratic. She's difficult. But they never asked why I stepped away. They never admitted what they did that made me leave. In truth, I wasn't unstable. I was inconvenient. I stopped being the version of me that made their lives easier. I stopped explaining my choices just to make them comfortable. And when I did, they labeled it madness. But now I know better. I know that having emotions doesn't make you weak. That setting boundaries doesn't make you cruel. That saying no doesn't make you broken. It makes you free. They tried to rewrite my story. But I rewrote it louder. In evidence. In testimony. In truth. They trained me to doubt myself. I trained myself to listen, to trust my body when it said something felt wrong, to trust my mind when it refused to shrink for their comfort. Being called unstable was never about my well-being. It was about control. And I no longer hand them the pen. I didn't survive to complain. I survived to light the way for others. I used to think survival was the end goal. To get through it. To crawl out whole. But survival was only the beginning. The real work began after. When the dust settled and I looked around and realized I was free. But also responsible. Not for them. For me. And maybe for others like me. I started writing. Not for revenge. Not to relive the pain. But to give shape to the truth. To say here I am. This happened. And I made it through. Each sentence was a small torch in the dark for so many else still finding their way out. I used to believe my story had to be quiet, private, but silence was their tool. Not mine. Mine is voice. Mine is choice. Mine is presence. Now when I speak I do not shake. When I remember I do not crumble. I do not hide the chapters they tried to erase. I turn them into pages of strength, of clarity, of fire. I did not survive to complain. I survived to rebuild, to rise, to reach back and hold out my hand to someone else still lost in the storm. And maybe that is the purpose. Not just to escape the fire, but to walk back into it with the light. So no one else has to walk blind. This isn't the end. Healing is not a final chapter. It is a daily practice. A choice I make each morning to live in truth, not fear. To speak even when it trembles. To walk forward even when the past calls back. I am Olivia Reeves. And I am not a victim of my story. I am the author now.